My next guest is a veteran independent journalist from Canada, reporting on everything from banking and foreign policy to mainstream media and secret societies. Though he's no armchair activist reporting from the sidelines because he's traversed the globe in pursuit of truth. And right now, on the line from Telfsbuchen, Austria, I'm joined by Dan Dix of pressfortruth.ca. So Dan, you're in Austria covering the annual Bilderberg conference. For viewers who don't know, who or what is Bilderberg?
Well, Bilderberg is a group of individuals. It's comprised of about 120 people or so, and it's some of the most powerful and influential people in the world. We're talking about presidents, prime ministers, heads of finance, heads of military men, media moguls. It's people who really have the power and influence to affect change in this world. So essentially, that's who's meeting here in Austria this week. Some of the major players and how, you know, people who are involved in making the real decisions, not the G7 that took place last week. That's the puppet show. This is the real show where decisions get made.
More importantly, Dan, why is Bilderberg so controversial?
Well, the reason why Bilderberg is so controversial is because they've existed ever since 1954, and people have really only begun to learn about them in the last 20 years or so. Now, that's because there's been the great work of a lot of investigative journalists, people like Jim Tucker, for example, who have been tirelessly trying to expose these guys. Now, the controversy lies in the fact that they do not print the meetings of their minutes. This is all behind closed doors and in secret, and they admit by themselves that this is to have a frank discussion so that we can openly discuss things and not have to worry about our, conversations being recorded. So that is essentially where the issue lies. I mean, if we knew what was being discussed in there, perhaps we wouldn't have such a big deal with it. Maybe there wouldn't be so many conspiracy theories that arise from this. If we could just have an open dialogue and perhaps, maybe they should be more transparent. And essentially, that's where the controversy comes from. Essentially, we don't know exactly what's going on in there, and we deserve to know because these are people who are making decisions that are going to affect our lives.
Dan, although the minutes of these meetings aren't made public, as you mentioned, it was reported that last year's agenda included discussion of technology and the internet. So what topics are on the table this year?
Yeah, there's a number of topics going on this year, but it's funny that you just mentioned technology because Luke Rudowski just had an incredible opportunity yesterday and the day before. We actually managed to get on the inside of the Bilderberg Hotel. And just a quick side note, we actually ran into the steering committee members, the same people who we confronted a year before. And so we're sitting here at the bar, I don't know, maybe 15 feet away from these ladies, and I can hear their conversation, and we notice that they're talking a lot about Peter Thiel. They're talking a lot about technology. I heard the word technology mentioned 4 or 5 times, and when I tuned in to kind of hear what they were saying, they were admittedly kind of laughing about how they're not very good with it, and they're not able to keep up with all the new technologies that are going on in the world. So just an interesting little tidbit of information that we saw on the inside of these steering committee members talking about how they're not very good with all this new technology and need to bring in some new young people to help them figure this stuff out. So anyways, just a little side note, but a lot of the things that have been posted on the official Bilderberg website anybody can look it up and check it out right now. I think they call it bilderbergmeetings.org, I think is the website. But as we know, more often than not, what's printed on these lists of attendees or agendas are not the real agendas or not the real attendees lists anyways. We know that they're going to be talking about what to do with the Ukraine. We know they're going to be talking about the situation with Russia. We know the internet is going to be a huge topic. How to deal with the rise of the independent media who are exposing these guys. So, it's tough to say going on what they say is going to be on the agenda because we certainly can't believe whatever they're telling us.
You posted on YouTube, Dan, a video that briefly explained your experience inside the Interalpen Hotel, which is obviously where Bilderberg's being held this year. Firstly, how'd you manage sneaking in, and what other details can you share with us?
Okay, well, the story for us begins not in Austria and Bilderberg, but it really starts in Munich, Germany, where Luke and I went to cover the G7 summit. And what we ended up doing was making our way into the press gallery using our Press for Truth press passes and We Are Change press passes. That allowed us access into the press gallery area, at least where we could apply for accreditation to the G7 summit. And all we had to do was provide passports, and they did a background check, and we were given accreditation into the G7. Long story short, it was because of that laminated pass, that magical little piece of paper that we got accredited with, that we managed to get through the checkpoint going on into Bilderberg. The reason why we were able to do it, and nobody else was because the White House press secretaries was actually staying at the Interlaken Hotel where Bilderberg was. So all of the White House's press was staying at the same hotel for Bilderberg to cover G7 in Munich, Germany. There was actually a helicopter that was flying these journalists from the Interlaken Hotel into Munich to cover the G7. So when we came to this roadblock and we had the official G7 accreditation passes, I think these security guards made a huge mistake and assumed that we were a part of the White House press gallery, and therefore they let us drive in there. So they made a big mistake, and we managed to get in because we had the proper accreditation. And then as soon as we got in, we registered for a room, and again, the hotel staff there shouldn't have allowed us to stay, but he gave us a room. So we ended up getting to stay in there. So it's just amazing how things managed to just work out for us. It's almost like we were meant to be in there. And at one point, we were the only people in there. Me, Luke Rudowski, and Jeff Berwick were the only people in there, aside from a few sketched out security guards walking around and, probably debugging the place or something. At that point, we knew we had to walk out, maybe try to find something interesting, and that's when I found exactly what I wanted to find, which is the room where the Bilderberg meeting takes place. And I was just blown away that I found that room. I looked in there and I saw every single individual seat. It was set up like almost like a university classroom, like a half C kind of bleachers formation with a huge television set at the front focal point of everything. I've never seen a flat screen TV this big before. And then every single chair for all 120 or 133 delegates had a microphone in front of it. And just as I went to take a picture, some security guy just, you can't be here, you guys got to get out of here. And we just simply did not have an opportunity to pull the phones out of our pocket and take a picture. But that was something that is burned and etched into my mind that I'll never forget. And I really wish I could have got a picture to show you guys. After that, we decided to explore the grounds outside a little bit. And within about 5 minutes of stepping outside of the grounds, we were immediately approached by police who demanded to see our identification. That was followed by a police officer in a suit who said, you guys are going to have to come back to the hotel. We need to talk. We need to see your ID. Go get me your passports. And they had a million questions for us. We were completely interrogated. And then we went back up to our rooms thinking we're going to be okay for one more night. 5 minutes went by. These guys came up and said, we're sorry, we made a big mistake, but you guys have to leave right away. You have to pack up and leave now. It's our mistake. It's our fault. Everything last night is free. You don't have to pay for the room. You don't have to pay for any of your meals. You don't have to pay for anything as long as you leave now. And a funny little side story, the head of security gave us a little tip, and he says, hey, since it's all on them, why don't you clean out the mini fridge while you're at it? So we decided to do just that, and that can be seen in some videos that were released by Luke Rudowski, and I'll have some of those videos up as well. But very, very interesting that we managed to get in there when nobody else could, because we went for the accreditation at the G7. That managed to get us access, and we got that inside scoop, which nobody else could.
You've been covering Bilderberg for a number of years now, Dan, and given your experience, what particularly stands out to you about this year's meeting?
So just the sheer level of intimidation from the police, I've certainly noticed has been, I don't know, increased tenfold from any other Bilderberg I've attended. That could be because it's the Cobra Command Security Joint Task Force Team or whatever it's called. This is the same security force that was assigned for the G7. And I mean, we know what kind of protests show up at G7s and G8s and G20s and these sorts of things. You just don't get that for Bilderberg. So using the same security force to me seemed like a lot of overkill, and perhaps that's why these guys are really hardcore about intimidating journalists, telling us, if you put anything online, we will detain you for up to 72 hours. We have the right under a terrorism act here that if for any reason we can just detain you for 72 hours. So Luke and I and Jeff has decided to play this game strategically, and we're not going to allow the Bilderberg group to have an opportunity to lock us up for 72 hours, because if that happens, the footage is not going to get released. So we've been, doing this strategically, and we're going to continue to do that as long as we can so that the information can get out, because that's the most important thing.
Dan Dix, independent journalist, thank you for coming on Teen Take. And if you, the viewer, would like to see more coverage on Bilderberg 2015, stay tuned from June 11th to 14th at pressfortruth.ca.